Welcome to the best kept secret among Army professionals, the Association of the United States Army, where it's our mission to support you at every point in your career, the support you deserve. A place America's total Army trusts for leadership skills, education, and community. A place where you can build your future and share your voice. A place that hears you. You've checked all the blocks so far. How many more can you check with AUSA in your squad? Advance your future. Join AUSA today.
The Association of the United States Army is pleased to welcome you to AUSA's Noon Report webinar series. This webinar series features presentations by senior Army leaders responsible for key programs and initiatives. The webinar series also features contemporary military authors who weave together the past, present, and future story of the United States Army. Kicking off today's webinar is AUSA's Vice President of Membership and Meetings, Brigadier General Retired Jack Haley.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Association of the United States Army's Noon Report. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We appreciate your support as partners in the defense of our nation. Joining us today to discuss Pivot to Readiness are Lieutenant General Scott Dingle, 45th Surgeon General of the Army and Commanding General, U.S. Army Medical Command, and Command Sergeant Major Diamond Hough, Command Sergeant Major, United States Army Medical Command. For those of us joining online today, please take advantage of having General Dingle and Sergeant Major Hough here to ask questions. You can use the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen to submit a question. After the discussion, we will take as many questions as possible. You can also find the full bio for General Dingle and Sergeant Major Hough and our moderator, Dr. Joseph Caravallo, in the Handouts tab. Today's moderator is Dr. Joseph Caravallo. Dr. Caravallo leads the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, a private, not-for-profit organization authorized by the U.S. Congress in 1983, whose mission is to partner to advance medicine for the mutual benefit of military and civilian health. As president and CEO, Dr. Caravallo guides the strategic vision for HJF and its global workforce in pursuit of its vital mission. He served in the Army for 38 years. His last assignment was as the Joint Staff Surgeon, serving as the Chief Medical Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He graduated with a medical doctorate from the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in 1983, and his clinical experience includes internal medicine, nuclear medicine, and cardiology. In 2019, he received an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Gonzaga University. Dr. Caravallo, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, General Haley. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be here today with Army Medicine senior leaders to help moderate today's discussion. As you've heard a second ago, Lieutenant General Dingle is the 45th Surgeon General of the United States Army and the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Medical Command. Prior to this appointment, he served as the DSG and the DCG for MEDCOM for support. He was commissioned through ROTC from Morgan State University and was a distinguished military graduate. He also has masters from Central Michigan University, the School of Advanced Military Studies, and the National War College. Accompanying him is Command Sergeant Major Hough, who is the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Surgeon General and the Command Sergeant Major of USA MEDCOM. He rose successfully through the ranks from Evacuation Treatment NCO through G3 Operations Sergeant Major and ultimately to his current role as Command Sergeant Major. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Political Science from Chaminade University in Honolulu and has a Master's in Leadership Studies from UTEP. So let's start off with the questions of these senior leaders. General Dingle, you've been delegated Title X authority from the Chief of Staff of the Army for readiness and training of the Army Medical Force. Now, during your tenure, federal law has empowered the Defense Health Agency with responsibility for the health care delivery benefit. Under that construct, how have you addressed readiness for the Army Medical Force?
Joe, thanks a lot. That is a great question, and I'm a tag team it with my battle. First, what Title X has given us as the United States Army, that delegation authority from the SecDef and the Chief, is the tremendous opportunity for Command Sergeant Major Hough and I to lead what I call the medical instrument of power. The medical instrument of power is the total Army medicine force from every specialty, from the foxhole to the fixed facility. Having that responsibility of being the integrator, the advisor, and the overwatch of Army medicine, we have approached it with a strategy that is rolled up in 5 R's, the Army medicine strategy. That first R is readiness. Our number one mission is to support the Army, and the Army's mission is to deploy, fight, and win wars with overwhelming lethality. Army medicine has that mission to conserve the fighting strength. So first and foremost, readiness is paramount. Army medicine has to be ready when called upon to support the force. The second R is reformed. Reformed is what the NDAA, or that Title X law that you talk about, both the code as well as NDAA law that comes out, that is what they direct us to do. It is the law. Many people ask, well, why are you doing these things? Well, because it's the law and we have to. And so reformation or reform is the second R. The third R is reorganized. Reorganize is not the law, but reorganization is what my boss, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of the Staff of the Army, directs me as the Commanding General, United States Army Medical Command, as well as the Surgeon General over Army Medicine, on how we're to organize the medical footprint or the medical force within the Army. That's reorganization. And then in addition to ready, reform, reorganize, the last 2 R's is that we will always be responsive. That means that whenever Army medicine is called upon, we will answer. And if you look back over the last few years, from COVID to wildfires to Operation Welcome, you name the exercise or the operation, Army medicine has been involved, and we've responded to the call of not just the Army, not just the Department of Defense, but also to our nation. And when Army medicine is called, we will respond. That's the fourth R. And then the final R is that we'll be relevant. Army medicine will modernize with the Army. We will stay in step with the Army. We will go where the Army goes. We will be relevant and at the table so that we can support the mission. And then that is how we roll that all up into our Title X responsibilities as we execute the mission. Command Sergeant Major, anything to add to that?
Nothing to add, sir.
All right, I have a question, a follow-up question for you, Command Sergeant Major Hough. How are you ensuring that our medical NCOs and our enlisted medical staff are trained and ready for deployment?
Yes, sir, great question. So as the boss talked about, excuse me, us remaining relevant and responsive. So now we get to focus on that. We've always had the duality of the mission to be responsible for healthcare delivery and readiness. Mm-hmm. And with the separation now, we get to really focus down on that readiness. And so what that means for us is different opportunities to get the training that our soldiers need. For an example, we have certain MTFs or healthcare facilities that are a little smaller, a little more remote, can't get the same sets and reps that we get at some of our larger platforms. Now we can look at policies and directing that to be able to get those soldiers to those different platforms to be able to maintain what we now call ICTLs, individual critical tasks. And so I think that is being able to optimize what we do for our soldiers so they are ready.
And you're able to do that on the installation, or do you have to pull them into a central area to get those reps?
Our first stop shop is at the MTFs that they work in right now. If we can't get them there, then we use partners on the installation, and then we actually reach out to civilian partners.
I see. And do you have an agreement with DHA, who has this healthcare delivery benefit mission, that you can pull the NCOs out for training?
Absolutely. So when you say, do we have an agreement, it is, we have made sure that our policies speak to the fact that where we want the training to happen is inside the facilities. Mm-hmm. And then if there's other opportunities, we partner with DHA's J7 to be able to talk about where we can get those opportunities. Then if we still can't get them there, then we reach out to our civilian partnerships.
And do you find that there's a significant difference on what you're expecting of our NCOs and what they have proven with great ability, in my experience in combat, and what they're able to do in the MTF, and you mentioned some are smaller, that there might be a disconnect. How do you keep them up to speed on things that we're going to expect of them in combat?
First of all, we have to clearly identify it. So the boss talked about readiness. We have to understand what that means for our force, for our Army. And part of that is and speaking to survivability. So we have to give them opportunities to do the warrior tasks and training that they deserve to be prepared to do the missions in whatever environment we ask them. And then they have to have that clinical currency to make sure that when they get there, they can execute that medical mission. So between those two things, that's how we define readiness for those enlisted soldiers.
Okay. General Dingle, can you speak a little more about what kinds of transformation steps you're taking to help provide the adequate control and oversight that you would like for readiness for the medical force?
Joe, that's I'm glad you brought that up. I first want to touch on something that Command Sergeant Major and you asked about, and I think that there is a perception that is out in the Department of Defense that as the Defense Health Agency stands up and the services pivot to readiness, that there's a separation. Having been involved with the establishment of the very first policy that implemented the Readiness Defense Health Agency stand-up, the one thing that I've learned, and I really want people to understand, is that there is no separation, but there's really a unification. Even though we talk policy and readiness, both are inextricably linked at the head, the hand, the hip, and the heart, that there is no separation. I tell folks when we talk about DHA and this right here, taking over this and focusing on the soldiers and readiness, I said there's no different. We're one team that are working together in accordance with the law of the execution of the policy to execute the military health system. As we do that and we transform and modernize to support a shift to readiness, the same commanders, director of health services that are wearing, the uniform, are the same commanders that are leading our facilities, our medical treatment facilities. Those same command teams, those same civilians are still executing healthcare delivery to a beneficiary population while ensuring priority readiness of the force to deploy, fight, and win. A medically ready force and a force that's medically ready. All at the first stop that you alluded to, which is the military treatment facility or a health readiness platform that generates the readiness for every soldier so that they can go when called upon to conserve the fighting strength. With that said, there were definitely some things that were very pragmatic that the services had to execute to ensure we're executing policy. Well, what are those? Well, one was, okay, we called it the splitting of healthcare delivery or the transfer of functions to ensure the right functions are in the right location. Whether they're civilians working in a medical treatment facility or a staff that has healthcare delivery responsibilities, which are clearly in accordance with the law and policy, the oversight and authority, direction, and control of the Defense Health Agency. With that, the readiness arm, because it's two arms, but those arms are still connected to one body, which we are always a team. And that's the number one thing that I think we have to do better across the entire military health system. At every post-camp and station, there's no change. The same great health care, whether Army, Navy, Air Force, or in a joint facility, is going to be the same phenomenal health care. The difference, as you know from your experience in Army medicine, is that I won't say for the first time, but I, Command Sergeant Major, and I are holding accountable our leaders to ensure that they are ready. Sergeant Major mentioned individual critical task and battle warrior skill task. Well, now it's being held accountable of commanders that sergeant, regardless the rank, colonel, regardless the specialty, has to be ready and proficient at the performance of those skills in accordance with their medical specialty to go and conserve the fighting strength in combat. And even tomorrow, as we conduct our next series of semi-annual training briefs, it's all designed to get after a focus, renewed focus on readiness. And I submit that Army medicine has always focused on readiness, except for now we're documenting it. And then now we have support, another teammate, our left hand, attached to that one readiness body to have an oversight, take care of the beneficiary population, the policies of healthcare delivery that are directly connected to the readiness of our soldiers. And I can't forget our civilians. Even though I keep saying soldiers, 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 don't get me wrong. The Army medicine team, the medical instrument of power, consists of soldiers, civilians, and contractors, all supporting the Army mission. And that's what makes it successful as well as exciting. So I've been excited through the change. I know that a lot of folks are concerned, but there's no need to concern. It's the same. It's no we versus they or us, and it's one team, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you. I think that the challenge that I see with medicine in general is that there aren't a lot of specialties or branches in the Army where you have a real world mission and a deployed mission, and you're required to do both at full capacity. And in case of Army medicine, you aren't staffed fully to do either one fully. So that's why I keep separating the healthcare delivery benefit mission and the deployed mission. And so there's only so many hours in the day. So when you that's why I talk about an agreement, so that a cardiologist doing her job every day must train differently on what you're expecting of her in a deployed setting. And that's why I think it's important to work through that. And then finally, it is not simply we're going to deploy you to combat. We have seen how you have deployed everyone for COVID. So it's also national emergencies and natural disasters where really you can see the heavy reliance that the U.S. government, that the White House has on medical assets, and that makes it a challenge. Everyone else prepares for war, goes to war. Army medicine, DoD medicine has a different change. So let me go to some of the questions that are up here. And first one is, what is your responsibility with the medical assets within the Guard and Reserve, and how is their readiness achieved?
So if I were to show a slide, I'm not going to show the slide. When Army medicine, it's one force, and it's what I call a TARF, or a Total Army Medicine Ready Force. And that Total Army Medicine Ready Force is a force that is not separated by compos. So whether Compo 1, Compo 2, Compo 3, it's all integrated to one standard of excellence as we get after the individual critical task list, the readiness of the medical force, and the individuals that are medical ready. All are integrated by me as the Surgeon General and the Command Sergeant Major as a senior enlisted advisor. And so as we champion those issues for the Army, we leverage and use in our structure. I have a Deputy Surgeon General for Reserve Affairs, or for Reserve and National Guard, as well as an Assistant Surgeon General, 2-star and a 1-star, for Reserve and National Guard. They assist me with providing that oversight for Compo 2 and 3 with the issue, the concerns, the readiness, as we tie into the Chief of the Army Reserve, the Chief of the National Guard, the Surgeon's Office, down to every medical unit. One thing that Command Sergeant Major Hough and I have also done is we tried to blur the line, blur the line and bring it to the table and ensure that the Compo 2 and Compo 3 leaders and specialties and issues of concern are being brought to my attention so that I can help impact that medical instrument of power, making sure that it is sharp regardless of Compo. And so I have oversight over all those. I integrate it, and I also work it through, again, both the chiefs for Compo 2 and 3 to ensure success. And then when it gets into the actual execution, by the specialties. In the past, the Surgeon General had consultants for every specialty. Consultants are my scouts, my eyes and ears in every specialty, whether cardiologists, ortho, dentist, doesn't make a difference. Everyone had a specialty over that area of concentration or that MOS, military occupational specialty. What I've done is I expanded it because I learned that some of the medical issues, as alluded to in the question, are different in Compo 3 than our Compo 1, different Compo 2 from Compo 3. And so if I've expanded the consultants who are my eyes and ears now down into Compo 2 and in Compo 3, and then have charged, again, my deputy surgeon generals for Compo 2 and 3 and assistant surgeon generals to be the eyes and ears with the Corps chiefs to champion all those issues so that we can address it, again, as a total Army medicine readiness force. So, Major?
Yes, sir. And I think what's important, and I've said this in many different forms, for us in medicine, it's absolutely about unity of effort. We can't get from point of injury back to our Road 4 facilities without there being unity of effort. So the total Army Medical Force is just part of that unity of effort.
All right, so let me build on this unity of effort, and you spoke to our work among the 3 compos, your work among the 3 compos, and to do this in peacetime, in preparation, rather than discovery learning in a deployed setting, which is excellent. But let me talk about 2 other ways you can slice and dice this joint task force. And let's talk about what are you doing, general purpose force, special operations forces. How are you aligning efforts to make sure that that's as streamlined as possible in a deployed setting?
So it all starts with training. And so at my level, I'm not dictating down to that level of detail when it now starts getting to my special operation forces. However, they are directly connected back up through that surgeon office to me. The base is not changing. The base has not changed. Every specialty, every AOC is going to have individual critical tasks that the individual soldier must first be proficient on. If you're in the Army, it doesn't make a difference. General purpose, generating force, special forces, operational force. You get your base foundation as that cardiologist, as that medic, or as that dental tech, proficient, period. We build upon those individual task lists, which were directed and established by me through TRADOC, on what every soldier should be trained on, and then it gets to the unit. That gets into the unit medal tasks. The mission essential task list of that special forces unit, that operational unit, or that medical command generating force unit, whether if it's the schoolhouse, a medical center, regardless of where it is. That medal is now driving the collective tasks of the individual soldier assigned to the unit. We have outlined the base foundation. The units now start to tailor it based on their specific missions to ensure that we as a team can perform that mission. And it has been a tremendous, I think, plate tectonic shift, because we're the first ones out of the hopper to have it accountable at the individual level, and then now being briefed and talked about readiness, at the Deputy Secretary of Defense level at OSD. And so the spotlight is on it. I think it is good because it goes back to something you just said a second ago about those same soldiers, in peacetime are live firing for real, and then called upon, whether if it's CONUS or whether if it's overseas, to do the same thing. My only concern is I'm very pleased with the training, how we're getting after that, individual as well as collective tasks, which results in individual medical readiness and a force that's medically ready to perform a mission. My concern is that it is a finite or a limited number of professionals that are executing that. And the thing about, and I'm biased, Joe, I'm biased towards Army medicine. I tell everybody up front. I think and we have some great brethren and sistren in our sister services, but I'm just biased towards Army, and when it comes to our mission to support the greatest Army, we got to have the greatest military medical force to support it. My concern is that and you know this, that the individuals that make up Army medicine, that wear this cloth, the profession of arms, love what they do. You love to take care of people. You love to take care of beneficiaries. You love to save soldiers. You love to save lives. And as you burn the candle on both stick, because you're doing it in peacetime, you're doing it in war, and then you're doing it when you're called upon to support disasters. And there's no rest. You know, and my concern, even in the COVID environment, is that these medical professionals love what they do, and they take care of others before they take care of themselves. And my concern is the burnout, you know, being able to take a knee. But in healthcare, it's hard to take a knee because somebody's counting on you. They're still coming into your department. You know, and so the thing that we're really looking and studying, and we've got RAND studies and got commanders involved, and through the Army Quality of Life, is trying to make sure that we're also building resiliency checks to make sure the Army force does not burn itself out. So, Major, anything?
Nothing to add to that, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me close this discussion here. Excellent answers, but in essence, all Army, right? 3 compos, all Army. I'm going to say that with SOF is not. It's more than one service, but let's say Army SOF. I'm going to now ask you of the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. How are you both addressing training, readiness, equipping for the Army medicine, so that they can operate in an interdependent fashion with other services in support of a joint task force?
Okay. You want to start it?
Yeah, so for the easy answer to that for me is that we've always been a joint force. Our military is a joint force. And if you're talking about the specificity of all the services working on one team, I would prefer to say that we make sure that the Army soldiers we train are the best at what we do. And then as we integrate with the rest of our sister services, we'll be the best teammates we can be. And I always tell people like this, I look at it like a baseball team. It's a team. And to win a championship, you all have to be good at your position. What I stress for Army is that we be good at our position. And then Navy be good at their position, and then Marines and Air Force there.
But let me say this as an example. What if I said Army was excellent and they speak Army language, Navy excellent and they speak a foreign language, Navy, Air Force speak a foreign language? How does that come together as a joint task force and be interoperable?
That's right. So if we're talking about blending our cultures and blending the way we communicate, the equipment we use to be more interoperable, absolutely. And we look for doing that in many different forms. As a matter of fact, approximately 3 months ago, we went down to Fort Hood where one of our mystics ran a JMX. Okay. And this JMX was phenomenal. And it brought in all the services to watch us execute military medicine together. So we always seek those opportunities to be able to do that. Absolutely.
Are you describing an interoperable, interdependent environment, or are you describing an interchangeable environment?
So if I'm being honest, I think we have to be cautionary when we try to be interchangeable. I prefer that we be interoperable. It's a reason why we're specific services, so we can specify and dominate our specific AORs. Okay. And I kind of think that's a good thing.
Okay. So, and let me add. So, you know, you said joint, and so it's like the hand. You know, the hand has joints. You know, and those joints, you know, are coming off of the base of the hand to support, you know, the tip.
Yeah, this is a great anatomy lesson here.
Right. And so, you know, with that, with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, what those 4, you know, or Coast Guard,
yes, sir.
You know, Space Force, you know, they're supporting specified missions, whether air, land, sea, ground, regardless of what it is. The services are training, Title 10 responsibility, make sure, Dingle, that your medics can execute in combat. You know, my Title 10 responsibility is making sure that the Army force is able to support the Army mission. Jointly, yet, you know, Army, SOF, Air Force, Navy forces that are jointly working together on an overall mission. When the Joint Force surgeon, or that combatant commander puts together that joint assemblage of a team to support a joint mission, if it's a joint task force, I submit that we are prepared to do that because of the individual readiness of the Army medical specialties. Okay, what does that joint task force consist of? When you were in the seat, we were trying to do and support trauma in Africa, forward deployed, and we're trying to work this joint. We said, well, what is it? Make the team up. Okay, here's what the team consists of. And we did a tip fit. We put the organization together and a manning document, and okay, hey, what can you provide? In a perfect world, what would happen is, hey, Army, here we go. I got this slot. We're filling them. Then it goes out as that joint force to execute. So in conjunction with combatant commanders, when that happens, I think that we as a Department of Defense are ready, because the Navy is getting after their individual critical task lists, their KSAs, Air Force likewise, those corpsmen, and then Army. But when we come together and we can plug things in, I think we can do it. We started to do that in COVID with the assemblage of some of our UAMTFs, Urban Augmentation Medical Task Force, where it didn't make a difference what was on the left of your uniform, because you were filling a joint mission, a joint Urban Augmentation Medical Task Force, where your specialty or your capability or skill set was fulfilling as part of a larger team. It was a joint task force. We executed it well. Move it to combat. I think we can do it because of the expertise that commanders in the field that are in Army medicine, Navy medicine, Air Force medicine are training our soldiers, in which the SecDef is now holding us accountable for the individual readiness. So when the joint task force, the joint manning document comes up, we can do it. We're doing it in peacetime, Walter Reed, JBSA, Fort Sam, Fort Belvoir. And I think that we're doing a tremendous job in learning lessons from it and the generating force that can easily be applied as we put a team together working in a joint or multi-domain environment.
Well, I'm a product of a joint medical school where my lab partners, one Air Force, one Navy, one Army. At the end of the day, medicine is a commodity and fungible, and so it shouldn't be that a soldier sees something differently than a sailor, different from an airman, right? And so that's what I think of when I say interchangeable. You can parachute someone in and she can operate together. Now, I believe a service ought to own the unit, right? So I think the Army ought to own anything on the ground. But if you were augmented by a Navy surgeon and an Air Force anesthesiologist, what have you, that team should still function, because medical, they should have the skills medical. And then the Army person ought to understand how to maneuver on the ground. Don't do PT in the landmine, that kind of. Same thing, would you be comfortable putting a soldier on a CCAT team in the air? Would you be comfortable putting a surgeon on an aircraft carrier if the Navy needed augmentation?
If I was called upon and the mission came to me, absolutely. We executed a few CCAT missions in the late 2000s.
But was it an Army unit, CCAT, or individuals?
It was individuals,
okay,
not an Army unit.
Yeah.
In order for me to be comfortable to put an Army unit in the air or in the sea, can they do it? As long as they got training.
Right, so I'm not talking about
them training.
Units would be very hard, because now we're talking service, culture, and maneuver.
Absolutely.
And things like that.
Yeah.
But clinically, right, can you operate? Can you be an OR tech? Can you be, those skills? And then maneuver-wise, listen to the guys who own that domain. I think if that's the case, Army ought to own everything on the ground. I think the days of seeing an Army hospital on the ground, and then seeing an Air Force hospital, then seeing a Navy hospital, this should be an Army ground run organization, augmented where needed. If you're interdependent, interoperable, potentially interchangeable. If I can come back to you with regards to NCO training, when you start to do public-private partnerships, and I know you're doing some, or you have great success in certain areas, I would imagine that the civilians are not savvy to how good our NCOs are on paper, because they'll look and say, where are your credentials that say you can do everything you told me you did in Iraq and Afghanistan? How are you getting past those challenges for civilian sector that can't appreciate what our guys are doing without the proper documentation?
Yeah, so we have to have liaisons. We have to have people from our services go out, and as we partner with these organizations, there is some explaining to be done. But one of the things that I really appreciate about the Army, we have made sure that our enlisted force is not left behind when it comes to civilian credentialing. And I believe as we continue to evolve and medicine continues to evolve, we as a service must continue to evolve as it comes to credentialing. And that makes it a lot easier to partner. When I walk in and say, hey, I'm a 6 to 8 whiskey, they go, huh, what's that? If I walk in and say I'm a paramedic, they go, oh, okay, you can go do these things. So I think it's both the liaison and the explanation to help them understand, and then also that we continue to gain and achieve civilian accreditation.
So you're partnering with the appropriate societies so that there can be an Army state, if you will, and get the right credentials as paramedic or what have you?
So we use the actual civilian credentialing bodies that everyone else uses.
I see.
And so, for example, the National Registry.
I see.
So when we go to the National Registry to get our EMT or to get our EMTP, that's recognizable everywhere.
So, Major, can you tell the audience about the SMART team and that MIL-SID partnership which builds on what you're talking about?
Right. So we have yes, sir, absolutely. We have a team that works for the Bosses 357 that is dedicated to our civilian partnerships. And for the enlisted side, we call it the SMART program. And what they do is they go out and establish these partnerships. And it's led by a very brilliant, talented civilian who has a background in nursing. So it makes it easy to communicate and speak the language. That, along with Senior Non-Commissioned Officer Whiskey 1, which is our advanced medic. They are the ones that are establishing these partnerships, liaisons, and communicating with our civilian force, and it's been phenomenal. We up in Jersey, Cooper, I had the opportunity of watching a PFC establish and secure an airway, and just watching and listening to that young soldier speak afterwards, the confidence, the understanding. In 2 weeks, they've gained more clinical repetition and currency than they had probably for the last 6 months, just with that one engagement.
I've heard rumors that the Army can send a contingent somewhere and offer to, this is just a stereotypical vignette I'm telling, to offer to run with make ambulance runs every evening, every weekend, as an example. And that there would be pushback because you'd be taking jobs away from a civilian force that normally does that kind of thing. Have you experienced anything like that?
I haven't. I have not. I've heard those same rumors, but I have not experienced it anymore.
And your SMART teams aren't relaying those kinds of stories back?
Not at all. The organization that we're partnering with are happy to have us. They're great partners, and they are seeking that engagement, that commune for us to be part of their team.
Yeah. They're asking for more.
Yeah, they are.
And so as we establish our military to civilian partnerships, enlisted and officer, as Sergeant Major mentioned, when we visit them, the testimonies of the soldiers are amazing. My initial response, Joe, was, you know what? I want 100 of these MIL-SID partnerships. I want to put all our soldiers in these facilities for these experiences. I was on fire, but then I come back to reality. My first responsibility is to the soldiers, airmen, Marines, all the Department of Defense, military treatment facilities, soldier readiness, family readiness at our MTFs. Because if I did that now, I'm impacting our military treatment facilities, because I'm so excited because everyone wants me to establish a partnership and send them out, when, in accordance with law, my first stop is the medical treatment facilities, which I am proud of because I'm taking care of soldiers and service members and beneficiaries' health, which is number one. But I get all the time, hey, can we get more? Even, I think that's a good example of, you mentioned this earlier, COVID. The response of whether wildfires, our COVID medical response teams, our urban augmentation medical task force, the mission assignments were coming from everywhere. We want more, we want more. We send them out there, and when they get to the hospitals and they see a 68 whiskey, you know, or the nurse, or the pharmacist, or the doc, or the admin person, they appreciated them so much that just the overwhelming, the feedback that I was getting from the states, counties, cities, the medical professionals, civilians, who had no clue what the military did. They may have had that perception of, wait a minute, if the Army comes in or Navy comes in, they're going to take over everything. But it was just the opposite, which again pulled and required their presence more in these civilian facilities, which gets back to my concern is those same soldiers, the civilians loved them, but yet they're not getting a knee, and I'm gonna bring them right back and put them right back to work and be prepared to go to war, which is tough.
Right. I'm going to make one comment to segue to a question that we have here. It seems that the relationship, if DHA has primacy on the healthcare delivery benefit, and you have primacy on supporting the Secretary and the Chief for Army medical readiness and readiness of the force, medical readiness of the force, couldn't you tell DHA, you're not doing it for me at this MTF? There is, even though 80% DMBI, I'm not seeing enough trauma for my guys, for me to be comfortable as a Surgeon General to have this cohort deploy, and I don't want to do a simulation. I don't want to put all my eggs in a simulation basket. So DHA, sucks to be you. You got this healthcare delivery. I'm taking my guys, and I'm going to send them across the country to do smart teams. So here's the question that is asked here. What is the operational relationship between the Defense Health Agency and the Army Medical Command?
Support us. Oh.
Go ahead, you said it.
The Defense Health Agency as our partner is in support of our readiness.
Right. Supporting.
We are the supported.
Okay.
So if I think we would have a great conversation if we saw that and it was at risk. And I believe, just like the boss said, that the DHA would respond to our need.
And I have to give DHA credit too, Joe, because that is how we're operating. Supporting. If the proficiency, the reps and the sets that you need as a provider are not at MTFA, we work in conjunction with the Defense Health Agency to let them know what we are going to do to ensure that doctor, medic gets the proficiency that they need. So I wouldn't say primacy, I would say partnership, because that's exactly what we're doing, and that's what we've done. Even as I establish our MILSID partnerships, it's within scope, scale, responsibility, capability of the medical treatment facility to generate readiness. And as we go through the identification of shortfalls, we work with the Defense Health Agency. This is where we're falling short. If we need to cross level within another MTF within the region, soon to be Medical Readiness Command, we work that out also in conjunction with DHA on what we are doing, because we also know where the readiness is being generated, whether within an MTF or medical center, or if we go into civilian, we're working it out together. So it's a partnership that I think is working very well.
As a retiree, can you tell me a little bit more about the Readiness Command? New to me.
Let you start.
So it's part of reorganization, and all we're doing is so here's what I like to say, sir. People see it as a huge change. Really, the change is coming mentally, right? Because as the boss has alluded to, our requirements to be able to make sure we have a ready medical force and a medically ready force have not changed. It really hasn't. And what we're doing is reorganizing so everyone can visualize that focus. So if you look at our readiness commands, they're still going to command the troop commands that support those MTFs. They're still going to command public health command elements, dental health command elements, and then all the SRUs that our wounded warriors live in. So we're going to stand up 4 new ones. We're going to redesignate 4 new ones coming up here real soon.
I see.
We're going to do it, of course, in keeping the traditions with our Army. So we're going to have a ceremony to make sure we we've ground that flag in, and everyone's recognizes it. But as far as how it's executed, it'll be very familiar to our team.
And then what we've also done is reorganize the medical command headquarters, where again we've transferred all the healthcare delivery functions to the Defense Health Agency staff. Also at the regional level, we have regional health commands under the medical command. Transferred the functions to the Defense Health Agency to their market structure, and then we now are focused on the readiness of the uniformed force. Thus the change from regional health commands, because we were regionally focused on the health, the beneficiary care, healthcare delivery, and readiness of our footprint, and then also, doing that balance of running it, the fiscal responsibilities and everything else. But now, with the new partnership, we've handed off the function to allow us to focus on the readiness of our soldiers. And that readiness, thus the name, Medical Readiness Commands, are going to be 4 of them, focus in the continent of the United States, Medical Readiness Command East, formerly Regional Health Command Atlantic. And then we have West, which is going to be headquarters out of JPSA, and then Medical Readiness Command Europe and Medical Readiness Command Pacific, supporting the mission.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with the both of you and really enlightening me on where Army medicine is now. What I'd like to do is give you an opportunity for any last comments or remarks.
Yeah, so the only thing I would say, what was really important to me that everyone knows is that Army medicine will continue to respond to the needs of our nation and our beneficiaries and our soldiers. Well, yeah.
Thank you, sir. General?
My last comments are few. Joe, you've heard me say this, and a lot of folks have. I say that Army medicine is Army strong, and to clarify that statement, Army medicine is comprised of the soldiers, the civilians, the family members, the contractors, who all contribute to the conservation of the fighting strength and readiness. That's Army medicine. We're strong because of the civilians. The medical instrument of power is as sharp as a scalpel because of the soldiers, civilians, contractors, retirees, supporters, AUSA, that all supports us. And my command team and I and all the commanders out there greatly appreciate, your support, AUSA support, and that's what makes Army medicine Army strong. We thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. General Haley, I'll pass the floor back to you.
Ooh, thanks, Doc. And gentlemen, thank you for a great discussion. I tell you, with these 3 leaders here, it's truly fantastic to take a complex issue and be able to explain it in an understandable manner. So thank you very much. Before we part, I'd like to inform you of some upcoming events. Some of you have heard of the AUSA annual meeting. Well, our annual meeting is 32 days away. It'll be held 10 to 12 October at the Washington Convention Center here in Washington, D.C. And registration and ticket sales are open. For more information about any AUSA event or to register, please visit our website at ausa.org. And finally, we want to thank all of you who support us with your membership. Membership matters. You help us support the Army. Thank you again for attending, and have a great Army Medicine Day. Thank you.